Test pilots are the unsung heroes of aviation. These are the men and women who risk their lives to push the limits of human achievement, breaking barriers and proving the impossible possible. From the earliest days of aviation to modern space exploration, test pilots have played a crucial role in advancing technology and improving safety. Names like Chuck Yeager, who shot down over 11 enemy aircraft before becoming the first man to break the sound barrier. Jimmy Doolittle, who led a daring counterattack on the Japanese mainland through the unconventional use of flying bombers off of carriers. And Neil Armstrong, who piloted his X-15 to hypersonic speeds before going on to become the first man to walk on the moon, are forever cemented in the history of aviation. Test pilots are continuously pushing the envelope to advance our capabilities, ensuring our warfighters have the best technology on the battlefield. Today I had the opportunity to speak with Billy Flynn. He was the chief experimental test pilot for the F-35 program and has flown fighter aircraft for more than 40 years. Today you'll hear about close calls, crashes, and the mindset that led him throughout his career. Let's get into it. All right, what's the scariest moment you've ever had flying?
Well, I've had some close calls, but I had an F-16 dive into the water over the Gulf of Mexico when I was going 600 knots at 100 feet above the water, where the flight control system had an error and tried to drive us and hit the water. And if I had not had my hand beside the side controller, I wouldn't have been able to grab the airplane in time, and we missed the water by fractions.
That's the closest. On autopilot, or what was going on with that?
We were doing automatic terrain following in a Block 60 aircraft, and it had a runtime error in the computer program and dove us into the water. And my hand was behind the stick because up ahead of me I saw shrimp boats and I was worried about the birds. And so I put my hand behind the stick and I caught it as it was heading into the water. It is as close as I ever came to dying, but obviously not dying.
Jesus. Have you ever had any close calls?
Yeah, I was in a crash young in my career in a 2-seat F5 that crashed into a snowbank. Now many years ago. I was uninjured. My instructor was badly maimed. It was a life-changing experience for me, especially early on in my career.
You crashed into a snowbank. Was that taken off?
No, landing in Springfield, Massachusetts many, many years ago in a freak snowstorm turned rainstorm, and we just got really unlucky. But I walked away and he didn't.
Wow. What was it like becoming a test pilot?
I grew up having read the book, The Right Stuff, and seen the movie a million times. To me, that test pilot world was something about exploration and discovery and adventure, and I somehow wanted to be part of that cadre. And I was fortunate enough to have flown as a test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base, at the Naval Air Station, Patuxent River, overseas, flying airplanes and doing brand new airplanes, doing things that no one could ever have imagined. And to me, it was always an incredibly exciting world to be a part of.
What was your favorite plane to fly?
Well, I'll tell you that I grew up in the F-18 and everyone loves their first girlfriend. But if it was a Sunday afternoon and you allowed me to take out my Ferrari, I'd take a slick, brand new F-16 out every time. It is the sexiest, most aggressive fighter ever made, and to me, that's the coolest jet ever to be a part of.
I agree. The latest block I flew was 50. Have you flown any of the newer ones?
So I was a Block 60 fighter pilot also. I've flown every block of F-16 from beginning to the latest. And again, I come back to, it's the coolest jet ever made.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
If you're enjoying stories like this, you're going to love my new book, The Art of Clear Thinking. This book is a distillation of the lessons we learn as fighter pilots and how you can apply them to your everyday life. There are stories about combat missions in Afghanistan where danger close drops, flying over 1,500 miles an hour and feeling the heat through the canopy, and why during an emergency, fighter pilots are taught to wind an analog clock before they act. Just for people who are watching this, if you pre-order the book, I'll send you a signed bookplate that's flown supersonic. Fill out the form in the description, and after your order number, type the code 216. All right, back to the interview.
How do you prepare yourself mentally to fly something like this?
To me, flying a fighter was always like going into a high-pressure athletic event. It took mental and physical preparation. So for me, it was working out or riding my bike every morning to get my head clear and my body ready. It was always lots of simulator time to make sure I understood what I was supposed to do in the jet. It is eating right, it is sleeping right, because it's such an intense, short duration effort that you need to be completely on the ball every single time you fly. And I never took that for granted because I knew all the stories of the accidents. And I knew the longer I did this, the more I had to be careful and be cognizant that the odds were against me.
What's some advice that you have for future generations of pilots?
Well, let's talk about how motivating it should be to be in an F-35 and the airplanes that are here to come. This is better than any video game that any kid ever touched. It's the coolest thing on the planet to do. And if I could do one thing, it would be to take every boy or girl out there and let them see what this world is that you and I live in. And they would spend more time at school studying math and physics to get a chance to be an F-35 test pilot or a fighter pilot.
What do you think are some common misconceptions about air combat, and how do you think it's changing over the next decades?
I think what we know from all the movies is about dogfighting, and it's Tom Cruise and Top Gun and that entire world. That's not the world of the F-35. Look, we fly an airplane that's essentially invisible, and in our cockpits, we see everything that exists in the air, all over the sea and on the ground. It's like playing football where our team's invisible and the other team is not, a grossly unfair advantage. It is not the world, though, of dogfighting like we imagined in the past. It's much more sophisticated with great distances apart, but also with an incredible lethality and overwhelming capability that we have, because we're the guys who aren't seen and we see everything.
And it's still maneuverable. I think you were the first person to develop the air show routine for it. Is that correct?
I created the air show to show everybody what the F-35 could do. People had a misconception that it could not dogfight. And we created maneuvers that in front of the crowd makes everyone become a believer on just how aggressive, how amazingly maneuverable this airplane is. Look, it's got an engine that puts out 43,000 pounds of thrust. It is just raw, brute power, and that's incredibly impressive.
What's your proudest moment flying?
I am proudest of being part of the development of automatic ground collision avoidance, the system that's now in the Viper and in the F-35, a version in F-22, and another version of it going into the Super Hornet and Legacy Hornet. It's a system that helps the aircraft avoid hitting the ground when somehow the pilot hasn't figured out what was going to happen. We've saved 12 F-16s and 13 F-16 pilots. Do that math, that means a two-seater. We've saved F-22s and F-35s already. To me, to be a part of the big team that developed that is saving lives, ranks as the most proud part of my entire flying history.
You miss flying the jet?
So, I flew fighters for 40 years. And it was a monk-like existence, getting up early, working out, being in shape because you had to be to go fly the jet. And I like life beyond this, to talk about it. It's fun to talk about flying fighters and the cool lives that we've lived. And the only time it bugs me is when I'm around a jet and I'm watching someone else going up to have fun. That's when I really miss flying a fighter.
Okay, you're like the real life maverick. I hear you're trying to get back in a jet.
I'm going back to fly soon. It is an infection. It's an addiction, and a good addiction. We love it so much. We were so fortunate to live a life filled with passion as we have. It's hard to ever walk away from that and not want to go back and just have a taste of it again.
40 years is incredible. How many people have made it to 40 years flying?
Well, it's a pretty small list of people that have been fortunate enough to enjoy this lifestyle. I think the people that I know that live like I have always appreciated just how blessed we were, how lucky we were along the way. And oh, by the way, we're still alive and many of our comrades are not. So we know we've been lucky over time.
And good. There are no old, bad fighter pilots.
Well, there's a whole bunch of luck that goes with that along the way.
Right.